Chapter 19. Branches tore at his arms, legs, and head as Jack pushed through the forest, chopping what he could with the sword, plowing through the rest. After May's scream, the black forest had gone dead. Not a single sound escaping, not even the pattering of raindrops on the canopy of branches. May! Jack yelled, not knowing or caring who or what else might hear him. May! Can you hear me? Whether she did or not, there was no response. Jack bared on anyway, following the barely visible path straight into the forest. Without any further sound to guide him, all he had was a path, but he comforted himself with the idea that Philip and the princess would have had to follow the same route. Although maybe whatever had made May scream had also pulled her off the path. May! Jack screamed at the top of his lungs. God, if you could hear me! A low groan answered him from just a few feet ahead. Jack skidded to a halt, almost tripping over a pair of legs covered in expensive gold fabric. Philip groaned again, looking like someone had tossed him bodily against one of the dead trees. Jack straddled Philip's legs, reached down, and yanked the prince to his feet. Philip, Jack said, what happened? Philip's eyes fluttered open. Jack? The prince asked, his eyes slowly focusing on the face in front of him. Jack, but I thought you left. Jack gritted his teeth at the delay. I changed my mind and followed you to here, he said, barely holding himself back from shaking the prince for answers. I knew I couldn't leave her with you. I knew something like this would happen. Leave her? The princess, Philip said, then took a deep breath. Where is the princess? This time, Jack didn't hold himself back. He banged the prince hard into a tree trunk, then jerked him back to his feet. Listen to me, Philip, Jack growled. I don't know what happened to her. That's why I'm asking you. You were supposed to protect her. Now tell me where she is. Something attacked us from the side, Philip said, shaking his head in confusion. I did not see it. Jack wanted to scream in frustration, but contented himself with dropping the prince. You're beyond useless. I should have known. Philip shook his head again. No, I just need a moment. My head aches like nothing I have ever felt. Jack bent down to look the prince right in the eye. If you got the princess killed, a headache will be the least of your worries. Believe me. Philip narrowed his eyes. Threats are not necessary, Jack. The prince stopped, frowning as he glanced at the glowing sword in Jack's hand. Jack stood up quickly, torn between hiding the sword and just ignoring the prince's look. Get up, Philip, Jack said, going with the ladder. We need to go after her. Where did you get that sword? Philip asked, rising to his feet gracefully. Did the prince have to do everything well? I told you before. I found it, Jack said, the explanation sounding pathetic even to his own ears. Can we focus on one thing at a time here? Right now, all I care is that the sword's giving us light, which we're going to need to find May. Philip nodded toward the woods. There, he said. The branches are displaced. Whatever took her, it must have carried her through there. Jack swung the sword around to light up a small hole between the trees. Unfortunately, the sword's glow didn't illuminate much beyond the hole itself. May! Jack screamed into the trees. May! Answer me if you can! I do not think she is able to, Philip said, then laid a hand on Jack's shoulder. Now please, silence may be the wiser choice. We do not wish to warn whatever took her that we are hunting it. Jack shut his mouth, then threw himself through a small hole and into the dead trees without another word, leaving Philip behind. Branches clawed him as he ran, scratching with every surge forward, while the roots under his feet seemed to be trying to trip him on purpose, succeeding far too often. After crashing to the ground for the third time, Jack shook off the pain and started to pick himself up, only for something to hit him in the back, shoving him face first into the dirt. The air whooshed from his lungs with the force of the hit, and claws sharp as needles cut into his skin on his back. Well, well, growled the voice more animal than human from on top of him. It takes a bit of thrill out of the hunt when the prey comes to you. Jack gritted his teeth and tried to throw the creature off his back, but his struggling only pushed the thing's claws deeper into his back. Jack shouted in pain, and the air around him began popping as he gasped for even the tiniest breath. Was this how he was going to die? Crushed by some creature in the Black Forest? Apparently he did fail at princess rescues. Then out of nowhere, the pressure on his back lifted. Without stopping to wonder why, Jack breathed deeply, the air never having tasted quite so good. He managed to push himself a bit off the ground, though his vision still wavered alarmingly in front of him. Whatever it was that had held him down must have stepped off his back. Stepped off, or Philip extended a hand down to Jack, even while staring off into the dark woods. Get up, Jack, the prince hissed. That creature has not gone far, and we will have to catch it if we are going to find May. Did you hurt it? Jack asked. The prince shook his head. It ran as I came up. Not that I had much to hit it with. I could barely follow you as it is. If I had not been able to see the light of your sword... Philip glanced down at the sword lying on the ground, then back up at Jack. And Jack could see it in his eyes. Philip knew what the sword was. He had to know. Are you hurt? The prince asked. If he did suspect about the sword, apparently he was keeping it to himself. Jack shook his head and got back to his feet. The forest swam in front of him for a brief moment, and he found himself leaning against the prince for support. But the dizziness soon passed. Jack pushed himself away from the prince a bit too hard, then led the way after the thing that had attacked him, slicing with his sword in every direction as he pushed through the brambles and branches. The sword cut through the growth as easily as it swung through air, a fact that Jack hadn't really noticed during his mad dash through the woods, but both of them noticed it now. "You cuss us all using that thing," Philip said quietly from behind Jack, but Jack ignored him. Right now, they needed to find May. Every so often, Philip would stop Jack, look around, then point to them in the new direction. Jack had no idea how the prince could possibly be tracking the monster or the princess. But that didn't matter as long as the prince knew what he was doing. The slashing quickly grew tedious, taking all of Jack's attention just to clear their way. But he soon lost track of how far they had come. His world narrowed down to cutting the branches away, moving forward, then cutting again. That was all he could think about. His sword cut this way and that, taking out a gnarled limb here, a large branch there, and suddenly a pair of red eyes floated in the darkness directly in front of them. Jack heard the same growl before, except this time the growl came from behind teeth of pure white that glowed eerily in the light of the sword, each as big as one of Jack's fingers. With a great roar that shook the forest, the teeth came flying right toward Jack's throat.